Come support Forge FC as they take on Toronto FC in the first leg of the Canadian Championship semi-final on Wednesday, July 10th at Tim Hortons Field. It's Hamilton versus Toronto for soccer supremacy. For tickets, go to forgefc.ca/tickets or call 905-527-FORGE.
This is Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell on the Forge Audio Network.
Welcome to this episode of Forge Daily. I am your host, Mackenzie Barwell, checking in July 8th, 2024. Today, I am joined by Steve Milton to review Forge FC's 3-3 draw to Vancouver FC, plus their upcoming matchup against TFC for that semifinal of the Canadian Championship this Wednesday. And let me tell you, Milty has a lot to say on the topic. So let's skip the intro and get right into our conversation. All right, Milty, thank you so much again for joining me on the audio network after what was, I think, a very short sleep for you following a time.
Oh, yeah. It was, I had to sleep fast.
Yeah. Well, we've got some exciting stuff to talk about, of course. That TFC match we'll probably get into a transition to. And then first and foremost, a 3-3 draw between Vancouver FC and Forge. Coach Bobby in the press conference talked about how self-inflicted wounds hurt, especially in football, and that game felt like a loss. So I'm sure you can see where he was coming from.
Well, it was a loss. It was a loss of 2 points that were in the bag. You can't do that, against a team that you're contending for a spot. Yeah, that it did. It felt like a loss. It really did, and especially the way it ended, and to have a man sort of just unmarked by about a foot and a half. He wasn't unmarked, just on the wrong shoulder. And you've just got to be aware of that kind. Bobby must have gone crazy pulling his hair out of his beard,
pulling his hair out of the beard.
That's right. Yeah. So, anyways, it was exciting. I mean, that's two games in a row that if you were watching that game as an objective observer of soccer or just a casual fan, you go, man, I love this. I'm coming back. Yeah. I'm coming back. Lots of goals, lots of last minute drama. Unfortunately for Forge, drama going the wrong way against them. But, part of that is the exciting kind of game that they play. But I think they just, teams are going to keep doing this to them until Forge shows that they can handle it. They keep dropping stuff into the box, and hope for a mistake. I have to say Vancouver had, two astoundingly good goals. I mean, really, really good goals. The last one was a Forge fault. That at least two players were at fault on that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll just hop in here and say there was nothing Jass could do about those initial two goals that you talk about. No. Like just absolute rockets that come down to coverage in the wrong places or coverage not at all.
You got to challenge a little more. You have to challenge a little more, and you never know what's going to be the one that makes the difference. That one little 2 or 3 feet that make the difference. And I thought even the first goal it was a brilliant strike. I mean, you're not going to find a better strike than that one. The sheer force of that shot, and the accuracy of it. Top left corner, unafraid to hit it high. I mean, you take the difference between that and say a couple of the Forge shots that were over the net, and great saves by Callum Irving as well.
Man, that guy was a wall, Milty.
He was an
absolute wall.
Yeah.
They talked about 11 minutes in, Forge had at least 3 shots on target, I think.
Oh, for sure.
But by that point, they were already down 1-0 because of that insane goal.
I know, because of the great drive. And then, I don't know what did you think of sort of the overall play of the game? I mean, they had possession, like unbelievable amount of possession.
Oh my gosh, Milty, I was going to get to that too. I think the full-time stat was about 63% in favor of Forge with regards to possession.
Right.
I think Forge are frustrated because of their ability to get ahead and then just letting it go. Too many times, Milty, I think, were they comfortable after scoring, because if you look at that equalizing goal Malik had, and I'll note here that this was a part of our conversation last week, right, about being strong in the air, and that's where their first goal came from. But then conceding a couple minutes later. And I think that was kind of the pattern. It was a little bit circular in that respect. And
that's a really good observation. And I agree 100% with you. And it's frustrating. I mean, they've given up 6 goals in 2 games. They've got a pretty tough schedule too right now with TFC. And then they play Pacific, don't they, right after that? And I mean,
Yep,
that's,
Pacific next Sunday too.
yeah. So that's another team that they're fighting for playoff spots with. I mean, that loss. Now I realize they have a game in hand. It's so tight between second and sixth. That loss dropped them to fifth and only 1 point out at sixth. So like fifth is the last playoff spot. I mean, lots of time. But each week we say that there's a little less time, to fix things up. So I think that who knows what kind of lift they might get if they do well on Wednesday against Toronto. I mean, you're looking for things. I don't think they necessarily need a lift. I think they just need to be more careful. I mean, there's a lack of
sharpness.
Yeah. Maybe. Would you say 90-minute focus here or something like this? Like it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to say, Milty, and I only confirm that because Coach Bobby has said that himself in our conversation.
Yeah, I can't. I haven't talked to Bobby for a couple of days, so I can't imagine. He must have been steaming. So.
Yeah, and I have a conversation with him planned for Behind the Beard this week, so I have a sneaking suspicion he'll probably reinforce that message. But he said to me that this team needs to be reminded that we need to play for the entirety of the 90 minutes and then some, because look at that last goal.
It was into stoppage time, barely, but it was stoppage there. Time. You allow somebody to, just get a step on the inside of you and full credit to Vancouver. They came on the road and did this. So
and Milty, I was curious to get your opinion on this because you're right. They have been successful in playing that the way that they do. But Coach Bobby talked about in the press conference after that Forge don't often get rewarded for their style of play or quote unquote playing football. And he said not to discredit Vancouver because they have, found some success in what they do. But for the fan who might suggest to Bobby, well, why don't you, reinvent the wheel here and beat them at their own game? What do you think his response would be to that? And why do you think he is so stuck in his ways? Has a negative connotation, but I mean it more so in sticking to their identity and playing the way that they do, despite not always getting the result.
I like your choice of words there because that's what it is. Identity. They are a team. Now that identity is a bit like an accordion. It comes in and out, but he would tell you that identity starts with good defensive play. And from there, you build your offense because they're not afraid to go up and score the ball. They're not afraid to keep possession of the ball. They're not afraid to find out where the attacking holes or the defensive holes are and try to probe them. And they know once in a while it leads to, but that's where they say they've got to have good defense from there. It stems from defense. And normally around this time of year is when that defense starts to grow and get stiffer. And from there, you get the good outlet pass, the good in the midfield, goes left, right through the middle, back and forth. And they do not get rewarded all the time for that, but they do get rewarded for it. And here's why, because it enables them, when you have an identity, for players who are new to the team or grow into the team after first, second, and third year, as we're seeing, with some players like Malik and people like that. They can grow into it because they know what they're growing into. Right.
It's a long-term thing.
Yeah, and they can see it and they can feel it, and it's reinforced daily, and they play that great lane game, and it's entertaining. And Bobby takes that very, very seriously. This is a guy. And it's not just Bobby. I mean, look at Eddie out there too. I'm talking about David Edgar, who is, essentially the assistant head coach, and they're out there together, and they both believe in this kind of playing the alley style. And later today, by the way, I'm going to be talking to John Herdman, and he likes to play. He'd like to play that style too. When he had both teams, the men's and the women's teams, he's struggling a bit with TFC at the moment on that. But it's important for Canadian soccer. I mean, this league's still new, to be entertaining. It can't be the way they've always played. So when you said that it's had a negative connotation, stuck in your ways, they're not stuck necessarily in their ways, but they're consistent in their ways. Within there's a sort of a broadband width there, width that they play within that, and people should know and react to it. And it's a reactionary type of things because it's left to the players on the field to make the right reads and those reactions. And that takes time, but it also is very, very satisfying. And it so far has led to lots of great things. But again, if it starts with defense, you've got to be more mentally aware on defense every second of the game.
And you'll pay for that, right?
You pay for it. You pay for it. Like, I mean, all of those things we've joked about, all the balls around, it bounces, all those kinds of things, not many goals. So if there's not many goals, one is huge, and you've got to, react, counter-react. And I like your point that they've sort of let down. And I don't know that they let down, but they've let the goal happen. And after, fighting so hard, and they have to fight so hard for goals because they have so many chances. They actually have an awful lot of misses too. I mean, they're, how many, great goaltending there, or they win that game going away, except for, Irving made a couple of, just unbelievable.
But you're right, Milty, when you look at the ratio between shots on target and just shots, I think it might even be half or something like that. So you're right. There need to be more in between the goal.
Well, that's it. And I mean, it was great to see a couple of things happen there. Again, Choignier's strike was like just a fabulous rocket. You could say that's lucky he got a deflection. No, it's not. That wasn't going to be stopped. Yeah.
Discredit that shot, absolutely.
No, and I mean, if anybody got in the way of that one, it was going to take their face off.
Yeah.
So,
for everybody's good.
Somebody walking along, without a nose. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, Milty, before we move on, because I do want to talk about TFC, and you mentioned how they do have, in some ways, a similar style of play. A couple guys I want to point out on this forward side who we saw start, which we haven't seen in recent games. Jassim Khalilat, of course, in goal. We talked about, his presence, but also inability to stop a lot of these shots because they were completely out of his control, right?
Yeah, they were, and he made a couple of good saves as well. I mean, they had 2 goals, 2 shots, right? The first 2 shots they scored on, and you take a look at that as a stat and go, well, but you have to watch the game, you have to realize, I mean, those were big league shots. They were scorers goals.
Now in the middle, we had Ali Hajabrapor. And Borges was pushed out to the number 7 attacking wing position. So what's to like or not to like about Borges on the wing? Because I'm biased. I used to play 6 and 8 in the center midfield, and I love seeing Borges play there. But what did you make of his positioning, and do you think he would have made an impact in a situation like that one?
Well, I actually don't have the answer to that. I think he can play anywhere. He's having a great year, so I think you're moving him around to kind of make sure he gets the ball and can cut in. I like when he cuts in, and he'll move across. He will move across. I'm fine with it. What do you think about it? As you say, you played those spots.
Yeah.
All I've done is look at them.
Well, I think the intention too, and I'll have to confirm this with Coach Bobby, was to get numbers forward. That was a big thing that we saw in transition.
That's their strength. That's their strength.
They were flooding. They were absolutely flooding the opposing 18-yard box. And I do like to see Borges on the wing and overlapping with Dav or vice versa in this case scenario. But because of the way that the goals happened for Vancouver, I would have liked to see Borges in the center, only because, one, I think it would have been a great addition to have support.
That's a good point.
The goals were primarily central, or that one cut back from the outside. But I really think I just love seeing Borges in the middle being able to facilitate more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm going to have to defer to you on that one because you have more more
totally
soccer
fair.
Knowledge of that kind of thing for me. I'm fine with it either way. And again, and Becker came in off the bench, right, on this game?
That's right. He came in at halftime.
Yeah, and he again, a couple of great corners, like a couple of great corners.
The 2 first goals, yes, exactly. The 2 goals that happened after he came in were off of the corners.
One was a true assist, and one was eventually, but it came from him, making the play originally. So yeah, I mean, again and again and again, we keep mentioning his name. Kyle is still the pilot light of it all. He's the absolute generator. He's the one that holds the feet to the fire and those kinds of things. But the others are right there too, and it's really important to this team. But then again, it's up to that group as well to just say, are we slipping a little bit here?
I want to talk about that leadership group in reference to the TFC game, because a lot of these guys who lead the team now were a part of that 2020 final. played in 2022. So what's to Forge's advantage about having that kind of experience and the same guys who might want, I don't know, quote unquote, revenge this time around?
Yeah, it's a combination of both, isn't it? Because the same guys that have had, a lot of the guys that have had that experience also have had deep experience with Forge. And I'm speaking specifically, the most graphically, being Jordan and Kyle Becker, both of whom were figured very prominently for TFC, and I maybe feel I would think a bit justifiably at some point done by. They were, especially when Kyle played, that franchise was quite a mess, and it was not a good thing for a young player to be in. And then you also had Borges was in that system, and so I think they'll have something to prove. But the thing about the fact that they should have won that championship, the 2020 season was a pandemic season, yet they were still going to have what is now the champion, and they were still going to play it, and you had to declare a representative, but they hadn't played the game yet because neither Toronto, or because of the pandemic restrictions in 2020. So what Ford struck a brilliant deal by saying, okay, you guys go ahead into the Champions League and represent Canada. In payback for that, you must play us for this championship for 2020 must be played at some time. They didn't know when it was going to be. The pandemic was on when they made this agreement. And B, it has to be in Hamilton. And that was a tremendous deal. And I think it had benefited both teams, really. So now you end up, and they go to 7 shootouts on that one, seventh shot, geez. I think. And really it took I took something, it was right at the end of the game. Hamilton could have won that thing. So now you come in there with that. So you add that, the motivation from that, the fact that they could play with a team from the MLS, could play with them and could have beaten them. They already had same situation against Montreal when it went into the 11th penalty shot, and then you combine that with what happened in the 2-game series with Montreal before then. There's a lot of stuff to add together to put into this game coming up. And then there's all the whole motivational thing, the them against us and the highway type of thing. And they got, $18 million. I mean, I don't know the figure that the organization's throwing around. I think they're throwing around $18 million payroll versus whatever the Ford salary cap is, 1.35 or something like that. So let's say 10 or 12 times at least 10 or 12 times the payroll. And you can play on that if you want. But that stuff only lasts if you need that kind of motivation, you got a problem. I mean, it's there. Mm-hmm. It's a nice secondary, third type thing. But once it starts, I think they feel they can beat them. And of course, they're struggling right now, TFC.
Yeah, I was taking a look at their placement in this MLS standings, Milty, and they're definitely nearing that bottom half, a little under.
Well, they started so well, but since the middle of May, I think I was looking this up. Well, first of all, they've had 6 straight losses, right? And they got completely thumped the other night, 4-0. They've won once in the last 12, tied twice and lost 9. And I know John keeps talking about keeping the faith, but they're also without Richie Laria and Jonathan Osorio, 2 very key guys that would also have some motivation here because they're from the area, right? They know the whole history of soccer in this area, and they're with Team Canada, so they're going to be unavailable. And I mean, they got some guys. I mean, here's the other thing, and people may not understand this. They like to come down the left side, right? And they've got Bernardeschi on the left-hand side, and he would probably have been marked by Para, if I'm not mistaken, right? And Para can't play. He's yellow carded out of this game. I'm almost
up,
positive.
I completely forgot.
Yeah.
I completely forgot Para is. Wow, that is a huge miss.
Huge thing. And I mean, they've got Insigne up front, and obviously Bernardeschi is Federico. It's Bernardeschi, right? Is that how you say his last name? He's on the starting 11 for the All-Star game. So if Forge can get that counterattack going, if they can get their own alley going, if they can somehow defend the balls against those 2 guys somehow and strip the ball from. They're also missing 2 midfielders who are hurt. They're hurting right now, and they're about to make some signings. I think the window opens again on the 18th of July, and they've got spots on their roster, so they're going to make some international signings. And John wants them to, just as he did with the men's team, I hate this word and I hate this sentence that I'm about to say, but believe in their process. He just keeps saying believe, believe, believe. And one of the things that John is one of his greatest strengths, and the players on the current Team Canada have alluded to this. Even the coach, Jesse Marsh, has alluded to this. He walked in and he can't believe how those players believe in themselves and the feeling that they have for each other. I mean, he's in a positive position right now, but he said he walked into something, and that is a credit to Herdman, because he helped create that belief. Well, that's what he's trying to bring to Toronto too, and it worked at the start. I mean, they got off to a tremendous start, and now they plateaued, and that's where beliefs are always tested. And so I think they're a little vulnerable. I mean, on paper, this should be TFC's game, but they don't play it on paper. They don't. They play it on a pitch. So it can be there. I mean, if you're going to catch TFC, now's the time to catch them. Who knows where they're going to be when they play the return leg, which is quite a ways away from now. They'll have signed at least probably 2 more big name players, big name within our kind of world.
By the second leg.
Yeah, I would think by the second leg.
Yeah, I guess same could be said for Forge too. If Cisse can get here by then,
they still have an extra card or 2 beyond him that they could do something with. Right. So let's see what they always surprise me. I mean, Parra was a big surprise.
It'll be interesting to see how it changes and how the lineups change by that second leg, because we could be looking at 2 relatively different looking teams.
Well, and one thing we haven't mentioned, and I hope to talk to Herdman and see if he knows. I think he will know him, but if he knows Nana.
Secret weapon, potentially.
Potentially. I mean, they have tape on him. There's no doubt about it that they've been studying the tape, but how much of it have they done? And how important is this to them? It should be. They're soccer people. They understand the value of hardware, and they're this close, Toronto, to getting to Champions Cup, which is a big thing, right? And I don't think they're going to do it through the league this year.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, if they continue in this trajectory in the MLS, this is going to be one of, if not the only pathways for them.
Sure.
So,
and
yeah, definitely a sense of urgency for them as well. Milty, before we wrap up, thank you so much for your insight here, by the way. This has been very insightful. What do you remember from that TFC Forge game in 2022? Were you watching the penalty kicks live?
Oh, yeah. I was there for that for sure. That game, what I remember most is Hamilton should have won, and that and I keep saying to myself, "There's no justice here. There's no justice here," and there isn't. I mean, it's a cruel sport. But I think that they keep at it. If they keep at it, what they're going to have to remember is the same thing they had in trouble with when Montreal made their substitutions in the first game, and I actually thought, and I think we all did, once they conceded an away goal, they probably weren't going to win that series. And the reasons a lot of that happened in that Montreal came on and they had to make. Hamilton played so well, they forced them to make changes. Hamilton should have been up by a couple, and they didn't. They didn't strike quick enough. That is that the higher level that you get, and nobody can argue that the MLS, nobody could argue that it isn't higher level at the moment than the CPL. Doesn't mean on any specific day, but in general, what you find in all sports when you go up a level is how quickly space closes. Mm-hmm. Right? You think you have more time than you do, and you do not have that time. And they need to recognize that, particularly if they get some kind of advantage, because that I think that's one of the reasons in against Toronto in those games that they didn't score enough. I mean, they did score enough; they should have won, but and they forced some good saves, but they sometimes took a little bit too much time. It's sometimes why we see that ball going over top of the net, because you take a little time. Now you get underneath it, you're off balance a little bit. You're not, or you don't take enough time. Either way, right. It's recognizing when the space is open and when it isn't, and it is different in this level of game. And I think they need to take. I would try to take the game to Toronto as they did in 2022, which was the actual 2020 championship. I would try to take it to them.
You're absolutely right, and I wish we had more time, to be honest, because I haven't sneaking suspicion, especially after you talk to John Herdman. There's going to be a lot more where that came from. Hey?
I hope so. And I can't tell you how much I respect John Herdman. He revived, absolutely, completely and utterly. It was him who revived my interest in this game. I'd given up on soccer. I just was sick of soccer in Canada, and totally sick of it. I didn't care if I ever, and then Herdman at the 2012 Olympics took a bunch of us aside, gave us seminars, really taught us, and really had all the time in the world for morons like me. And I'm thankful to him for that.
Well, that's really cool, Milty. I hope you enjoy your conversation. I can't wait to hear all about it.
Okay. Right, Mac.
Okay, that will conclude today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, thank you to Milty for sharing all of his knowledge. That'll give you all of the context you need for what promises to be another entertaining CPL MLS match. Tomorrow, I'm joined by Coach Bobby for another episode of Behind the Beard. And then Wednesday, of course, you've got a matchup to tune into. So get excited for the next couple days of following Forge FC.
This has been Forge Daily with Mackenzie Barwell. If you like what you heard, please like, follow, subscribe, comment, and share.
Right.
And they have a new coach.
Okay, Milty. Yeah. We got to wrap.
All right, sorry.